Welcome to the EuniceFactor. I'm Eunice Russell, and on today's segment we're going to talk about the legalization of cannabis in the state of California and the influence that out-of-state corporate cannabis businesses and unions have had on the licensing process. We're going to look at the city of Pomona, California, which has approximately 150,000 residents. Pomona currently has two measures on the ballot for cannabis licensing. One, Measure PO, is the current law in the city of Pomona, and the other, Measure PM, is an initiative that was signed by more than 10,000 Pomona residents. Now, why two measures? Well, here's what happened. Back in 2018, there were a group of individuals whose family was receiving cancer treatment at a local hospital. Well, they came from different areas, and some of the people that were receiving treatment were Pomona residents, but they were looking for a location where they could receive legal, affordable cannabis for their loved ones. Now, Pomona is situated in Los Angeles County, but it is also bordered by San Bernardino and Orange County, and it's minutes away of Riverside County. It has four major freeways or highways that run through it or in close proximity to it. So this makes Pomona a hub and a central location for the two major emergency centers, hospital centers in Southern California. So now, with that in mind, this group got together and they circulated a petition to create an initiative to place the legalization of cannabis on the ballot. And so the city of Pomona had a new city council. Most of the members had, or all of them, I believe, had never held city office before. So in reference to this measure, I think that they leaned to the advice of the city attorney as well as the city manager, because in the city of Pomona, the city manager really runs the city. Although their city manager says that his job is to carry out the will of the city council, he fails to state that it's his opinion and research that guides the city council to know or to address what they want. Because rarely do they, as part-time employees, do they have the time to look up and do the necessary research. So the city manager runs the city. And so I think the council leaned into what the city manager advised them, as well as the city attorney, as to what they could do to delay placing the People's Initiative, Measure PM, on the 2018 ballot. They were advised by the city attorney that they could request an impact survey. Now, they only had a couple of weeks in order to place the measure on the ballot. So asking for the impact survey would have taken them beyond that time frame and hold it over to the next election, what was 2020. And they did that. They hired the third-party consultant, HDL Consulting, who would later on also administer the city's cannabis application program. HDL is also at the center of the controversy of a number of cities that have been sued because of their application process and HDL's administration of those processes. So here we are. They've didn't put the measure on the ballot, and so now they have an opportunity to create their own measure. They meaning the city council. So they did create a measure, and if you read it, it does have, or seems to have, influence from the labor section. In the state of California, it takes 20 employees to stimulate the law that you have to do a collective bargaining agreement. Here in Pomona, it's only 5. And for the licensing process, if you didn't have a collective bargaining agreement, you could not receive the maximum number of points in the application process, which totally was unfair to anybody who didn't have that particular collective bargaining agreement. And here's what's really crazy. Laborers are to help the employees, all right? So when you have a business that doesn't have any employees yet, and you decide what the union is going to be that represents them, how is that in their best interest? Since the union is supposed to help the employees, shouldn't they have some say in which union it was? And in the city of Pomona, there was the influence of of the service employees and the farm workers. So who do you select? Who do you go to? How do you determine as an employer what's really best? And it forces an employer to become unionized. And it's not to be anti-union, because unions serve a great service to a great number of people. But what it does do is says that you can't be a good business or a good employer if you're not a union business, and that's a lie. And it gives them it corners the market for union control, as well as outside corporate interests. And it wipes out the ability for small local business owners. As a matter of fact, one of the corporations that applied for a license in the city of Pomona also sued the city of Pasadena for having a portion of their application that granted extra points for local business owners. Well, they partnered with a local business owner in Pomona. So, I mean, you can see the duplicity of everything that goes on. The application process has already gone on, and all they're waiting for in the city is the outcome of the election. If Measure PO, which is the current law, wins, then they'll announce who the winners are. And the way it's set up right now, all of the finalists are union affiliated and they're corporate. Pardon me, they're either large corporations or out-of-state corporations with local interests. So the whole entire process was not fair. And know that, city of Pomona. Also, Measure PO has not really addressed the problem that the city was having with illegal cannabis operations. Right now, there's an illegal operation that's been running almost with impunity for years in the city, and it's still open today as this goes out. So, for the city to sell Measure PO like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, no, it's what they did, whether it's by mistake and the council's dependence on their legal counsel and their manager, or it's from greed of selling out the interest of the city to unions and corporate interest. Whether they thought it was in the best interest of the city or not, it isn't. It creates an unfair monopoly. The way it stands now, if Measure PO wins, there are two corporations that applied for licenses as micro businesses and dispensary only. And if they are awarded those licenses, they will be the only two businesses running manufacturing, distribution, and retail of cannabis in the city. So how fair is that? They also have been saying that Measure PM was backed by outside interests. These are families. As far as my research showed, they're just families who came together. They wanted to put something on the ballot because nobody was listening to them in the city at that time. The city doing a bait and switch. They extended the time, and what they thought is if they could create their own license, go through the licensing process, and have it all said and done, somehow or other they thought that they maybe wouldn't have to put it on the ballot, because when it came around again for 2020, they were still looking for ways to delay placing it on the ballot, and that they were advised by council, and you can read the city minutes and notes on this. They were advised by council that they had to put it on the ballot, but they could also put the current law, which was Measure PO, on the ballot also. So residents of Pomona, take a look at it. Do you want your city run by outside corporate interests? Do you want unions to have a monopoly on any industry? And this is not anything against unions. It's just that any group who creates that you have to go through them to do business is unfair. It's unfair to the businesses. It's unfair to the residents. You don't have to be a union to be a good employer, especially in what could be a small or a large size business. It just depends on who's running that business. But you don't have to do that. And for them to block you into the corner to have to be unionized, for them to fix the application process where only union affiliated applicants could qualify for the total amount of points being issued, that was unfair. for the city themselves to create a law, what they call, to keep them transparent, where they're not doing any undercover deals. No, if you look at it from the other side, what the city did is created a law so that you could not call them out on the duplicity of what they created by making this bill, this measure, for creating this measure, placing it into law and stuffing it down the throats of their citizens. Because you don't get a whole lot said and done in 3 minutes at a city council meeting, especially when they're listening to the advice of their staff, of their city manager, and they don't know any better themselves. Now they've got some time under their belts, but what they did with this ordinance, where you can't talk to them about it, none of this is on them in an election period, so they don't get called out. But this was wrong. It was wrong from the start. And the citizens of the city of Pomona have an opportunity to change that. Measure PM has the same state qualifications as any measure would have to have. They have the same distance, the same safety checks put in regarding children. There are so many different things that are going on that you can't see in an ad. And if you don't know these things, you just go about by what they said. They put a fact sheet on the city website. Well, the fact sheet, of course, is going to be in favor of Measure PO. They talk about public hearings, but they don't tell you what effect that public hearings have on the actual application process and the scoring process. They didn't even have uniform questions. All of the applicants should have been asked and had to answer the same questions, not different questions for different applicants. The citizens should have had an opportunity to compare the various applicants and had more information to judge what they were bringing to the city. So the application process was a farce at best. Because yes, you got to ask questions, but what impact did those questions have? How do you know how they measured those questions? Because it's all done behind the scenes. So I say to you, look at the process, look at who's handling it, and you have an opportunity now to make a difference. So vote November 3rd. Vote like your life depends on it, because it does. We're living in some very crazy times. Don't accept what I say. Don't accept what you see on a mailer. Don't accept it just because your representatives told you that this is what this is what you should do. In the state of California, most of the government here is pro-union. The people in the area of Pomona that are in the state legislature either worked for the union or they're pro-union. So they vote toward that, and they advise you to vote toward that. But that doesn't make it necessarily in your best interest. So read, people. Read, know the facts, and don't get cornered, and don't sell your city out. Allow some room for the small business. You see where things are going. You see how we're divided as a nation based on some of the craziest ideas and thoughts. Our country was built on the backs of enterprising men and women. And to shut out people because they don't belong to a special group or another is unfair and goes against that principle. And it definitely doesn't show any compassion or transparency. So I tell you this, pray and then vote. God bless you all. Take care. Don't forget, Tuesday, November 3rd, and you don't have to wait. Some cities, especially like the city of Pomona, start voting on October 24th, which is a Saturday. So you have some time prior to the election, so you don't have to wait in the long line. So as soon as those polls open for you to go in, go in. If you can't stand in line, then drop your ballot off. Drop it into the polling places. I would consider all those things. Again, I say God bless you all. Stay safe. And even if you think you got coronavirus under control, think about somebody else and wear a mask. Bye-bye.